So welcome everybody to our Sunday service with the theme of beloved community in February, which is also Black History Month. It's good to see your faces on the screen and not on the screen for some of you. It's good to know you're with us here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Pensacola. And we begin this morning with music for centering. And now we have our chalice lighting from, looks like the Levitt family, Will and Val and Pam. We have our chalice lit. Thank you. Here we sit together, an intricate network of strangers sometimes and friends, a human web held together by our individual as well as our shared hopes and dreams, thoughts and feelings, cares and concerns. We come seeking a deeper understanding of who we are, who we want to be, how we will walk together on an incredible journey of identity and intention. In the midst of partisan division, weather calamity, fear of the unknown, as well as hope for new discoveries and developments, we come together in the context of this Unitarian Universalist community, connected by a heritage and convictions of our religious tradition, seeking answers to questions about life and love, birth and death, fear and hate, pain and suffering, justice and compassion, joy and sorrow. We know as we gather this morning that all around us are people in despair, people suffering the effects of nature and human nature in all its variety and forms. Let us take a moment, and let us take this moment as a gift, a moment of thoughtfulness to acknowledge our connections to one another, to those beyond our sight, to the natural world, and to all that inspires us in our quest for truth and meaning. Here, among these people with whom we quest for truth and meaning, these people with whom we share so much, may we come together in our shared task of reaching out to one another as well as to the larger world in harmony with the principles and values we hold in common in an honest, concerted effort to build beloved community. Come, let us join together in the spirit of worship. Please join with me in the words to our church covenant. Love is the spirit of this church and service its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you. And now we have a moment of mindfulness led by Pam Levitt.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to take a moment just to get comfortable, get in a position for meditation. You just want to make sure that you're seated comfortably. Put your hands in your lap. Make sure your posture is straight and tall. You can focus your eyes in front of you. We're going to have some hand motions today to go along with ours. And just take a moment to find your breath. When we're working with the kids, sometimes I like to say we're going to use our dragon breath. So we're going to breathe in through our nose and then blow out your mouth like you're a dragon blowing fire. Breathe in through your nose. And one more time. We're going to put our hands in our hearts and feel the beating. We breathe in love and breathe out peace. We long for peace and love in a beloved community. Today, we're going to offer a metta meditation. So there's 3 parts to the metta meditation, and there's hand motions that go with all of it. I'm going to go through it once, and then we can say it together. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be filled with love. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be filled with love. May we be happy. May we be peaceful. May we be filled with love. Let's say it one more time together. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be filled with love. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be filled with love. May we be happy. May we be peaceful. May we be filled with love. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a very nice way to begin.
Hi, I'm Scott, this is my boy Desmond, and we are part of the BSA, formerly known as the Boy Scouts, but now as it's transitioning into a broader sense, it's the BSA now. So this is BSA Sunday, and we're happy to be here to represent. I'm one of the assistant scout leaders for Troop 495, and my son Desmond is in 495. And before we talk about our work that we do with the Boy Scouts, I know that this is also 2 things. It's Black History Month, but it's also we're going to be talking about John Sunday today. So I was going to show you. Huh? John Lewis, I'm sorry. I just went to a John Sunday event yesterday and it's Sunday. John Lewis is who we're talking about today. So I was going to show you a couple images here. Let me see if I can do the screen share. And this is one of our family friends, heroes. a man named Leroy Boyd. A lot of you might know him. And this is honestly something I didn't know about Leroy until after he had died. So I was doing some historical research on him for an article I'm working on with the Florida Historical Quarterly. And when I did a search for Leroy, the very first newspaper article that came up was him earning his Eagle Scout Award when he was 16. And one of the things that's often associated with the Eagle Scout is a leadership, and how people become stronger leaders because of the work that they've done. Because it's a really big deal to make an Eagle Scout. You have to jump through a lot of hoops. You have to work with a lot of different people, learn all sorts of different skills. And Leroy was one of the many people that accomplished this. And what I thought was interesting was two things. One of the next times that he was in the newspaper was after he got out of the Air Force a few years later, and he was arrested for a desegregation protest right afterwards. And what they did was they went and but him and some people with the NAACP Youth Council went into a local pool hall. There was a family fun entertainment center that didn't allow Black folks in there, and it was downtown on Gregory Street. And he and some friends went in there to desegregate the place because at that point it was already past the time when segregation should have ended. So they went in there, the cops got called on him, and he and his wife Jeannie were arrested. And I think that's the first time that he was arrested. And I thought it was kind of interesting because I'm sure in an interesting way that is part of one of the leadership skills that he picked up. The courage, commitment was part of this. And also the other interesting part was that it's right across the street from where we meet with the Boy Scouts. So I just wanted to show that in here, and then I'm just going to get there. And so one sec. And that's me and Leroy a few years later, shortly before he passed away. And currently he's buried over at Brinkis National Cemetery. So I wanted to show that and to show some of the leadership and some of the history within the Boy Scouts and what that could lead to. Leroy was a big hero of ours, almost Desmond's godfather, actually. And he was just a major figure in Pensacola. So probably he, and along with a handful of other folks, were the closest we have to a John Lewis in Pensacola. So just wanted to show that and give that recognition and shout out to the Boy Scouts and the BSA. So Des, can I ask you a question? Mm-hmm. All right. What are some things that you've learned in Boy Scouts?
I've learned how to like chop wood for a fire. So that also is kind of like how to survive, I guess, out in the woods if you need to. How to like properly prepare food. Again, if you're out in the woods or something.
But you've become a pretty good cook because of that too.
Yeah, I've been cooking a lot because of that. Oh yeah, how to like set up a tent like on my own.
Yeah, so it's been doing some pretty cool stuff, and this gives us the opportunity to turn off our screens for a while because you can't log in, you can't check your phone. Not only are you not supposed to, but you literally can't because you're just too far away from a signal. So even if we wanted to cheat, we can't do it. So it gives us the time to be able to back out of all of that and to be able to connect with me and Des out there in nature, connect with nature, and be a part of something bigger, including the world, and learn things together. So yeah, the last thing I wanted to do was I wanted to just give a recognition to anybody out there who is a Boy Scout. So if you're a former Boy Scout, part of the BSA, if you want to do one of those hand emoji things, those wave things in there, that would be cool. Or wave in there. Awesome. All right, so shout out to you. All right, got a bunch of it. So this is your day too. All right, so thanks everybody, and yeah.
Thank you,
Turn the
Scott.
mic over.
Thank you, Scott and Des. Appreciate that very much. So today we have a fabulous story, and Pam is going to share her screen with us. We're preaching to the chickens about John Lewis.
Peace and welcome to our story time, brought to you by our Niagara Falls Underground Railroad Heritage Center and produced by the Atlanta School for Gifted Youngsters. You know, kids, reading is very important because through books you can learn about yourself and the world around you. Through our story time, we're going to share with you some amazing books. And I know you're going to enjoy today's story. So grab your healthy snacks, sit on back, and enjoy today's story. Preaching to the Chickens, the story of young John Lewis, written by Jabari Asim, illustrated by E.B. Lewis, read with permission by MSU Children's and Ya Literature Collection, published by Penguin Books. To the grandgirls, Jenzea and Amandla, J.A. To John Lewis and the soldiers who fought for civil rights, and to my adopted school, Plantersville Elementary School in South Carolina, EBL. Little John Lewis loved the spring. He loved it not only because it was the time when the whole planet came alive, but also because it was the season of the chicks. Winter was too cold to bring them safely into the world, and summer was too hot. Spring was just right. Everyone on the farm had work to do. Work and put your trust in God, John's mama liked to say, and God's gonna take care of his children. Trusting in God was easy. Work was a harder bargain. There was just so much to do on a huge farm in southern Alabama. Every March, John's father hitched the plow to his stubborn old mule. "Giddy up," he'd shout, and together they'd break new ground, carving lines in the earth. In the fall, after months of planting, weeding, and tending, the cotton would be ready for picking. John's mother cooked the family's meals from vegetables she grew: collards, tomatoes, sweet potatoes, and other goodies. She cleaned the family's clothes in a big iron pot, stirring them in the boiling water and washing them with the homemade soap before hanging them on the line to dry. Yes, Lord, plenty of work on a farm. John was excited to be put in charge of the chickens. There were about 60 of them, Rhode Island Reds, strong-winged bantams, Dominiques with gray stripes as dull as dishwater and legs as yellow as daisies. John loved to see them flutter and strut and flap their wings. Every day, John got up early and fed them dried corn just shelled from the cob, then lined their nests with fresh straw. Cluck, 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 the chicken said. John knew they meant thank you. In a soft voice, John would say to them, "Enjoy the day that God has given us." The chickens, looking straight at him, seemed to understand. As much as John loved spring, he loved church even more. On Sundays, the whole family headed to services. John and his brothers were dressed in slacks and crisp white shirts, his sisters in neat dresses. Outside the church, friends and relatives greeted each other with big smiles. Inside, voices joined in song. John often listened to gospel and country music on the radio. He enjoyed it, but he found his favorite music of all in church. Plain voices praising God without any instruments at all.
Oh, maze, and grace, how sweet the sound that saved your wretch like me. I
As the worshipers clapped and sang, John felt the Holy Spirit rocking the room. It reminded him of the peace he felt when he roused the chickens from slumber and led them into the light of the bright new day. Like ministers he heard in the church, John wanted to preach, so he gathered his chickens in the yard. John stretched his arms above his flock and let the words pour forth. The chickens nodded and dipped their beaks as if they agreed. They swayed in the rhythm of his voice. John's brothers and sisters couldn't tell one bird from another. John knew everyone, and he had a line of verse for each one of them. Blessed are the peacemakers, he'd say, when they fought over their morning meal. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, he would tell a hen who didn't want to share, for they shall be satisfied. One day, the rolling store man stopped by to make a trade. His truck was packed with flour, sugar, cooking oil, and bolts of cloth in bright colors. I've got plenty of good things, he said to John's mom and dad. I'll give them to you for a healthy hen. But John didn't want to part with any of his chickens, and he knew they wanted to stay with him. He convinced his parents there were other things to trade, like eggs and seeds. The chickens stayed on the farm, and John learned to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. John even baptized the chicks, bathing them in the water from an old syrup can. But Lil Pullet had stayed under too long and appeared to have drowned. John prayed over her and laid her in the sun. After a while, she began to breathe again and soon was up on her feet. He can heal the sick, John declared, and raise the dead. Little Pullet, can I get a witness? Peep, 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 said Little Pullet. John knew she meant amen. When the hen called Big Bell fell into the well and got stuck, John was determined to save her. He filled a basket with breadcrumbs, and when he lowered it down, she climbed in and was pulled to safety. God makes miracles every day, John preached. When you're down, he lifts you up. Sister Big Bell, I believe you know what I mean. Cluck, 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 Big Bell replied. John knew she meant amen. John loved to tell the hens and chicks the good news. While he fed and watched them, he spoke about the value of hard work and patience. With faith and hope, he said, a bountiful harvest was sure to come. John's henhouse sermons became so regular that his brothers and sisters took to calling him preacher. He didn't mind. He knew that someday he'd speak before thousands. He hoped that his words would stir people's souls and move them to action. For now, though, he had his own church right here among the pine trees and rolling hills of southern Alabama. Morning would find him in his usual place, preaching to the chickens.
I love that story. And we have a musical selection now, Love Will Guide Us, sung by Laura Keith King. You can sing along.
Love Will Guide Us by Sally Rogers. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot
Thank you, Laura. So John Lewis loved to tell his story about preaching to the chickens. So much so that once, when he was invited to speak at a reunion of civil rights leaders, he was asked to please not tell the story about the chickens because he only had 5 minutes to speak and the story took 10. When John was 4 years old, which was in 1944, his father bought 110 acres of land. They were sharecroppers. 110 acres of land for $300 that he had saved up. So you can imagine that $300 was a lot more than it is now. And the farm was near Troy, Alabama, which is where John took care of those chickens and preached to them. What the story doesn't tell us is that John Lewis had a stutter, and yet he so wanted to be a minister that he practiced his preaching with the chickens. He came to love his flock of chickens, and when chicken ended up on the dinner table, he was already ready to protest. He would boycott the meal. One time, he did not speak to his mother for 3 days. When John started to school, he rode a broken down school bus with the other Black children, while the white children rode the brand new school buses to their school, to their white school. John didn't like that his family didn't have the same rights as the white families. When John was 15 years old, he heard Martin Luther King Jr. on the radio, and listening to him, John was inspired. And he kept up with the news and the drama of what was going on around him in the country. That was also the year that John preached his first public sermon. When it was time for college, John wanted to go to a local state school. He knew they were less expensive. But after sending his transcripts to Troy State and his application, he never heard from them. He decided to write a letter to Dr. King, and Dr. King invited him to come to Montgomery. But in the meantime, he had been accepted to an historically Black school in Nashville. His uncle gave him $100, the most money he had ever had. He put all of his stuff in a footlocker and headed off to school in Nashville. When Dr. King learned that he was in Nashville, he told him to come and see him when he was home for spring break, which John did. And Dr. King sent him a bus ticket and had someone pick him up at the bus station and took him to the First Baptist Church, where Reverend Ralph Abernathy was minister. Dr. King and Reverend Abernathy were standing behind a desk when John walked in, and John was so scared he didn't know what to do. King asked him, "Are you the boy from Troy?" And John said, "I am John Robert Lewis," giving his full name. Even so, Dr. King always called him the boy from Troy. Dr. King offered to file a lawsuit against Troy State and against the state of Alabama, telling John that that would enable him to go to school there. But he told John that he should go home and talk to his parents, because the lawsuit might cause them to lose their land, or their house could be bombed or burned. And John's parents were scared. So John decided to go back to Nashville. He graduated from the American Baptist Theological Seminary in Nashville, and he was ordained a Baptist minister. He then earned a bachelor's degree in religion and philosophy from Fisk University, also an historically Black college, and he was a member there of the Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. In Nashville, John got involved with student activists, taking training from Jim Lawson of the Fellowship of Reconciliation. In 1960, only white people were allowed to sit at the counters and order food in the diners in town. Lewis participated in organizing sit-ins where students, mostly Black, took seats at those counters in peaceful, orderly ways. And at first there was no trouble. But as more and more people started to do this and sit-ins began to spread across the South, attacks begin. And even though the students remained calm and did not react or get angry with the people that were attacking them, they were assaulted and often arrested. One day, 81 students in several diners across Nashville who were sitting peacefully while being attacked were arrested and taken to jail. None of their white attackers were arrested. John was committed to the nonviolent, peaceful protest that King taught. For a long time, he had been bothered by the injustice that he saw. Even as a young boy, he noticed how unfair things were, and he did not like it. In 1956, when John was 16, he and some of his brothers and sisters and first cousins went down to the public library to get library cards. They were trying to check out some books. They were told by the librarian that the library was for whites only. His mom used to tell him, "Be cool, don't get into trouble." But John believed that if you saw something that was not right, not fair, not just, you had a moral obligation to speak up and speak out. He knew that there could be serious consequences. But it was part of the price you had to pay, he said later, to help liberate not just yourself, but others. He said, sometimes you have to get into trouble. He called it getting into good trouble. In 1961, John was one of the original 13 who decided to challenge segregation on buses. They boarded buses to ride from Washington, D.C. to New Orleans. The freedom rides were something John believed had to be done. He was 21 years old and nearly lost his life numerous times on those rides. The group was attacked by the Klan, a bus was firebombed, and the group ended up spending several weeks in Parchment Penitentiary in Mississippi. The movement was successful, though, in changing the way Americans traveled. The cost was certainly high. On May 29th of 1961, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy petitioned the Interstate Commerce Commission to ban segregation on interstate bus travel. This order led to the removal of the Jim Crow signs from stations, bus stations, waiting rooms, water fountains, and restrooms in bus terminals. The signs that John Lewis said, "We won't see anymore unless it's in a museum." In 1963, Mr. Lewis became the chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, and helped to organize the March on Washington, where the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his "I Have a Dream" speech. At age 23, Lewis was the youngest speaker at the march. Civil rights historian Raymond Arsenal described Lewis as absolutely fearless and courageous, totally committed, he said. People knew that he always had their back and that they could count on him. He had an incorruptible commitment to nonviolence. On March 7th, 1965, John Lewis and Hosea Williams led some 500 to 600 civil rights marchers out of Selma toward Montgomery. The protest was going as planned until they reached the Edmund Pettus Bridge. There, they encountered a wall of state troopers, and every white man over age 21 who chose to be deputized by Sheriff Jim Clark that day. The televised images of the brutal attack against peaceful marchers reached living rooms across the country and the world. And when it did that, it reached hearts. In a news special, Note to Self, John Lewis spoke in his own words to his younger self, saying, 2 years after you speak at the March on Washington, you will see the face of death leading a march for voting across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma to our state capitol to dramatize to the nation and the world our determination to win first-class citizenship. You were beaten on that bridge. You thought you were going to die. but you would make it. You would live to see your mother and father cast their first votes. You would live also to see this segregated nation that you live in send an African American president and his family to the White House. And guess what, young John, talking to himself, by some divine providence, as if to send a message down through the ages, that man would be nominated on the 45th anniversary of the March on Washington. John, thank you, he said to himself, for going to the library with your brothers and sisters and cousins. You were denied a library card. You were sad. But one day you were elected to the Congress. You wrote a book called Walking with the Wind, and the same library invited you to come back for a book signing where Black and white citizens showed up. And after the book signing, they gave you a library card. John got to see much of what he worked and prayed for come to be. And yet he also saw the backlash tearing away at that dream. In his book, Across That Bridge, written in 2017, he acknowledged we have been shaken to realism by what we have witnessed in the last few years. John never gave up, though. He used his training as a preacher, the values he developed growing up, the call he felt to work for justice and equality, and his voice as a politician and statesman in the United States House of Representatives for the last 33 years until his death, to serve the country in a steadfast commitment to end racism and discrimination through peaceful interactions and getting into good trouble. In a tweet from June 2018, he wrote, "Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble." And now we have the time to share from our own gifts in a way to support this congregation and the trouble we make inside and outside of our walls. I know for sure we are all thinking about the people who have been suffering this absolute weather disaster without electricity and water in the midst of a pandemic. We certainly hold all of those people in our hearts. From Sarah, a joy, the puzzles are complete. From Desmond and Scott, concern for their family in Texas. Absolutely. From Marcy, concerns for my sister Mary. She has numerous health challenges. From Pam, Will, and Val, Will says his joy is that he got a bunch of new books this week to read and gets to play World of Cubes and hopefully Minecraft. What would we do without these computers and these games? From Maeve, I got a new dinosaur mask. All right. And from Joe Vincent, we send all our love to Carol on what should have been her Tori's 38th birthday. From Dolly, my family in Texas and Baton Rouge is among those suffering from this horrendous storm. Their homes were inside down to 39 degrees. I'm thrilled they have their power back. Oh my goodness, yes. And from the Levitts, thinking of you, Carol. From Laura Keith King, Ed and I are joyful to be planning a one-night getaway from home at a dog-friendly hotel in Pensacola. Just across town is good, isn't it? Out of the house. Val's joy is also that she got new books. Her concern is that she misses her family and friends, and she is dealing with some new health diagnosis. Oh, we're so sorry, Val. I hope that that works out. I want to let Lynn know I'm thinking of her today. I don't know if you want to put that in the, is it okay? Lynn lost her mother. Her mother died. And so we all want to hold Lynn in our hearts today. There it is. Lynn's mother, Carol Carmichael, died February 16th at West Florida Hospital from COVID. She worked as an RE teacher for UUCP on Scott Street in the mid-1990s. We will miss her so much. I didn't know that about her. How lovely. Those were the days when I was very active in the district in religious education and chaired the district committee and may have known her. From Denise D'Angelo, deepest condolences. And from Laura Keith King, so sorry, Lynn. I'm sure that all of us are holding you in our thoughts. Well, thank you all for sharing, for the opportunity to feel those connections to one another. and to have the opportunity to support one another in these times. It makes a difference. It really matters. So now we have this opportunity to share with one another in a small group, and we'll see you back here shortly. We're going to have a closing hymn that you can sing along with. And then, of course, we're all going to stay muted when we sing. Isn't that great? We get to sing as loud as we want. We don't have to worry if we're on key or off key or who's listening to us. I love it. So we'll have a closing hymn, and then we'll have some closing words, and then we'll all unmute and yell goodbye to everybody. Okay, so that's the plan for the rest of the service. So the hymn, is everybody back now? Okay, so the song that we have is from our hymnal, As We Leave This Friendly Place. And we're going to see if we can get the words up there so you can sing along with Denise, who's going to sing for us. Yeah.
As we leave this friendly place, love to light us every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
Thank you, Denise. And Mary Lee has closing words for us.
Closing words this morning are by Alice Blair Wesley. We pledge to walk together in the ways of truth and affection, as best we know them now or may learn them in days to come, that we and our children may be fulfilled, and that we may speak to the world in words and actions of peace and goodwill. May it be so.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody for being here today. It makes such a difference that we plan and then we get to see all your faces and know that you took the time to be present with us. It's so good to see Charlotte and Bob. It's the first time I've seen your faces on the screen, and I'm delighted. And you can all unmute and wave and yell and, you know, whatever you want to say to each other at this point.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
See you. Good
Have
to
a
see
great
you
week.
all.
See you next month. Have a great week.
Have a great week. Hope to see you at
Bye-bye.
coffee hour.
See you at coffee hour.
Come to coffee hour.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you next time. Bye, Dolly.
Bye.
You can say something, Dad.
Bye, Lisa.
Bye. Yeah, call me later, Denise.
Okay, will do.